This is Prepper Bear again. It's been a while since we've done a video. One of the things that I have been having problems finding here lately is 380 ACP. So what I wanted to do was to show you how I'm reloading the 380 ACP with the Berry's plated 100 grain bullets. These have the hollow base in it. See the hollow base, which seems to work pretty well, and these are very nicely done, and these are available, so that's a big plus. I'm going to be using today, I'm going to be using Bullseye powder. One of the recipes that I use uses Bullseye powder, and so I think they work really well, and I'll show you how to do that. We'll be using the CCI small pistol primers, the number 500, and I'm using brand new 380 ACP brass, but the same process goes if you're using used brass. You just have to make sure that it's clean and inspected. I won't go into those particular details. There's a lot of videos that talk about that. I wanted to just talk about how I load the 380 ACP. I'm going to be using the 4 die set that Lee puts out. So there's a die for decapping and case resizing, and then there's a die for flaring, and also if you wanted to put powder through the die, you could do that. Then there's a bullet seating die. It's also a crimping die, but I don't use it like that. I backed off the crimp and I just use it for bullet seating. The overall length for a 380 ACP is extremely critical, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then finally I use the factory crimp. That's the 4th die in order to get the tapered crimp that you need to use on a 380 ACP. The other thing that I'll be using today is a case gauge. The gauge, now this one is from Wilson Combat, and what it does a number of things. It allows you to check the whether your overall length of the bullet meets acceptable standards where it slides in. It also allows you to check the case length, because if you use a old brass, sometimes the brass, after you resize it, will stretch back out. And for a 380 ACP, it's critical because the rim, or the front end of the case, is actually what holds the bullet from sliding through. So you can check to see whether the length of the case itself makes it so that it needs to be trimmed, and you can check that. These are very, very handy. You can pick those up fairly cheap. I think this one was like 15 or 19 bucks, something like that. 380 auto. Very important because, as many of you know, a lot of the weapons are very finicky about 380 overall length, and different weapons have different levels of finickiness with regard to that. So let's go ahead and start. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is to deprime and fully resize. I'm using the Lyman press here. This is a single stage press. I'm not really in that big of a hurry. I've seen a lot of videos where people are using progressives. I don't need to do that. These have carbide die set, so you really don't have to worry too much about lubrication. If you needed to, you can use some case lube. I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so these are new brass, but the same process would exist for the old, for used brass, and that would be put the shell in. You got to have the specific case holder in your press, and then just very carefully raise the case up and then resize, fully resize. You know, the Lee instructions actually do provide you with how to set up your particular dies. I'm not going to show you how to do that or tell you how to do that, but these are set up correctly. So that was the first one. The second one goes in. You can see how that it's fully resizing, doing a nice job. Now you got to be careful with these cases because they can crimp really, really easily, like bend. It just seems like they're really, really small. Okay, now the third one's going in. Alright, great. So that one's done. I like to stack my cases up in order, getting them ready. As I said before, an additional step is if you had fired brass, you might want to check the case length to see whether it exceeds it. Now this case gauge will give you that capability. These are okay, so it's totally flush. I set it on a flat surface, it's totally flush. So no real issues there. These are brand new. Okay, so that's that. Let me go ahead and take this particular one out. Again, these are all set up, so it's not really an issue with regard to setting the dies up. These are already done. The next one is the die that actually puts the little bit of flare on the top of the case mouth so that the bullet can go in, because as you know, the 380 ACP is a tapered case, and of course the bullet needs to have a little bit of opening to get in. In addition to that, I'm going to prime at this particular time. I have the little additional primer add-on. You can see it here for this Lyman press. You put the primer here, and then on the reverse stroke, and I'll show you that, you actually can insert the primer. So I like to do that at the same time that I'm doing the case flare. So let me grab a couple of these primers out of here, see if I can get them out without spilling. Get 3 primers out. Alright, got 3 primers. We'll just set those right there. Okay. So I take my case. Always wear eye protection when you do this particular part with the with primers. You never know what's going to happen. Now this is going to put a very light flare opening at the very top. So let me raise the level of the ram, and it's putting just a little bit on there. So now I want to take my primer. I got my ram up high. Then I'm going to put the primer itself onto, with the anvil side up, onto the extractor, and I push it in. You can see how I'm pushing it inside there. And then I'm going to lower the ram, and then I pull it down, and it actually will seat the primer. Okay, so that's that one. And let's just take a look. You can see that the primer itself is nicely seated flush, and the case has a little bit of flare. So I'm going to quickly do these other two. Put the shell in, grab the primer, put the primer in position. I'll flare the top, got a little bit of flare. Push the primer into position, then lower it down. Okay, raise it back up a little bit, and it's done. Okay, so number 2. All right, the next step is to go ahead and take the this out. And what I'm going to do now is to basically charge the case. So I'm going to use a little bit of powder here. I'm going to use Bullseye powder. Okay, let me get these set. As I mentioned before, now I've already checked these. The 0.3 cc dipper using Bullseye powder will give you approximately 2.7 to 2.8 grains of powder. Now I've checked this. You can double check it again, but that's what I use. So I use a dipping technique to get my powder in. Okay, tap it. And then I use the little funnel. Put the powder in. That's one. So I'm using the 0.3 dipper, lead dipper. My powder technique on these dippers is a little weird, but there we go. Now I'll put it into the second one. Put it into the case. So now I've got 2.7 to 2.8 grains into each one. All right. So the powder is loaded. In there you can check your own measurements and to make sure that that is appropriate for what you're planning to do. The next die that we're going to be using is the bullet seating die. Bullet seating die goes in. Okay. We take one of the buried bullets. What I like to do is to do a final case look, make sure, take a look at the cases, make sure that the level of powder is exactly the same. Now on 380, it's hard to double charge them because you won't be able to get the bullet in. But these two do look the same, and let me go ahead and show you that. So take a look at those two. They do look the same. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I will then set the bullet on top on the little flared opening. You see how they very nicely sit on top of there. Okay. Okay, so now I take the bullet, put it into the press. This is already set up. I have a little mark on here that I've set up. And my overall length that I like to use, and let me show you that. I put a little mark on here once I set it because I previously set those up, is using a 0.97 overall case length. Now if you look at the 380 ACP chart, and we'll just take a quick look at it, the one that they supply with regard to the lead dies, you can see that they give you some of the data on the 380 ACP, and they say that the maximum overall length is 0.984 inches. So my overall length is 0.97 is what my target is. So that's what I have my die set up for. So let's go ahead and put the bullet in, and let's see how close we're going to get to that. So we got the bullet sitting in there. Make sure it's kind of straight. Okay. It'll push it in. You just slowly raise it up to the top, and it's going to push the bullet in. Okay, so we got that. Now this is not crimped yet, so kind of set that over here to the side. Do the second bullet. Set this one over here. Again, it's not crimped. Raise it up slowly. Seat the bullet. Take a look at this. There's no bulging in the case or anything like that. You got to be careful with the 380 ACP, because if you have a bullet that's too long, there can actually be a little bit of a rim that forms because the bullet is so long and it pushes down to, I think, the thicker part of the case, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that's what happens. I've tried that with some lead bullets that are longer. 100 grains are probably about as long as you can use without causing that issue. What I'm going to do now is use my calipers, and I got a pair of these digital calipers to see if I see what my overall length is. So let me go ahead and turn those on, zero it out. Okay, whoops, zero it out. So let me take and put the bullet in, check my overall length. Oops, that's in millimeters. We want it in inches. This says my overall length is 0.973, so a little bit longer than what I thought. I may have to tweak down a little bit. Yeah, 0.975. That's still within the limits, but I think it's because my die is not set down far enough. Let me turn it a little bit. Turn it one little notch, one little hair. Now I shoot a Ruger LCP, and it seems to like that 0.97, so let me take it up, check it again. So hopefully that pushed it down. That went to 0.973, just a little bit more. A lot of times you can have a little bit of bullet variation with the bullet itself. So I'm turning it clockwise and it's lowering it down just a smidge at a time. Okay, try that. See if I can get that's 0.972. I'm going down in a very going down in very small increments. Okay, try it again. Once you get it set up, and if you do these in batches, you can get your dies set up, and then it's easy. I'm only doing 2 right now. Okay, there it is. So that's perfect. 0.969 inches. That's exactly what I want. I was very, very close to it. So let me put the other one in here. Size that one. Okay, that should be the same as far as its overall length. Yeah, that's pretty doggone close. 0.967 on that particular one. Okay, now this is where you use the case gauge. This is this case gauge from Wilson Combat. A lot of people use the barrel of their pistol in order to check whether this is going to work, to make sure that they have the right crimp and everything. I like to check it initially with this. It slides in very nicely. Okay. The case length is good. The bullet length is good. And I usually do this before I crimp it, then after I crimp it, just to double check. So I've got my 2 bullets. Take this die off. And then I'm going to use the factory crimp. Now the factory crimp does essentially one thing, and that is to put a tapered crimp, a small tapered crimp that holds the bullet during firing, and also ensures that the bullet doesn't move backwards or forwards, because remember, the overall length, if it goes lower in the case, can change the pressure and increase the pressure of the round. The other issue to remember again is that the little lip here is what's holding the bullet from sliding down the barrel in a rimless cartridge like the 380 ACP. So I got this set up already. It has a fairly light taper on it. Put the bullet in, raise the ram, and it puts a tapered crimp on the bullet itself. And you can feel it because the little lips on the front of the case, they actually go down a little bit into the bullet. It really crimps it down. Okay, second one's going to go in. Okay, perfect. Now let me go ahead and use my Wilson gauge again, and I'll check see how it slides in. It should just drop easily in, and then, as they say, they recommend that you actually just set the gauge on a flat table, and it should be flush there. You can see that this would then check your overall length of the bullet itself. Okay, so very, very handy device. You don't have to use the barrel. You could use the barrel. Let me check the other one. It should just drop right in, just like it was feeding. All right, so we've got 2 completed rounds with the Barry's bullet. I'm hoping that helps you out. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave me a question or a comment at my channel, and I will talk to you later on. Thanks a lot.